3 weeks ago, a classified intelligence memo slipped through the cracks, exposing a truth that was supposed to remain buried forever. President Cyril Ramaphosa, according to these documents, authorized at least 17 covert operations between 2021 and 2024, operations that Parliament never knew about, that Treasury never audited, and that may have crossed the boundaries of South Africa's own constitution. This isn't speculation or rumor. It's documented, traceable, and deeply troubling. What does it mean when the head of state can act entirely in secret, bypassing the mechanisms meant to hold him accountable? What happens when the watchdogs themselves are asleep, or worse, complicit? The person pulling back the curtain is Becky MKHwanazi, the former head of the State Security Special Operations Unit. He spent over 2 decades inside the intelligence apparatus, watching as structures built during apartheid were dismantled, reconfigured, and then quietly repurposed. MKHwanazi's silence wasn't by choice. Threats, legal restrictions, and the safety of his family kept him quiet. Until recently, when his own identity was compromised in one of these operations, and his family was directly threatened by foreign actors who believed he held explosive information. That's when silence became more dangerous than exposure. What emerged from his first protected interview, 7 hours long, is more than a list of operations. It's a blueprint of a parallel power structure operating behind the facade of democracy. Offshore accounts, private military contractors on the government payroll, intelligence operations conducted without oversight, financial flows that bypass public scrutiny, all pointing straight to the president's office. Think about that for a second. When the state itself becomes a secret actor, where does accountability even exist? The first operation MKHwanazi exposed is called Sentinel Blue. Launched in early 2021, it was officially described as a counterintelligence initiative targeting terrorist financing. The reality? Domestic surveillance of political opponents, union leaders, and investigative journalists. Phones intercepted, locations tracked, social networks analyzed, tools normally reserved for international espionage. Parliamentary committees received a sanitized briefing that hid the domestic monitoring, and when one member questioned the budget, pressure silenced her. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Knowing the truth could put your career, or your safety, at risk. Sentinel Blue's timeline is crucial. January 2021, Ramaphosa faces growing public frustration over economic collapse and vaccine rollout delays. February, questions arise about his campaign funding. March, Sentinel Blue receives emergency funding. By April, investigative reporting on presidential campaign finance vanishes, journalists abruptly go silent, and one leaves the country entirely. Coincidence? MKHwanazi's documents suggest otherwise, showing direct presidential oversight in monitoring who reported what and when. Then there's Operation Coastal Watch, ostensibly about maritime security and illegal fishing. Publicly transparent, with parliamentary approval. Behind the scenes, radar installations monitored encrypted communications from foreign diplomatic missions, equipment bought from European firms specializing in diplomatic intelligence, payments routed through Mauritius shell companies to conceal the trail. Why would South Africa intercept allies' communications under the guise of maritime security? Money tells its own story. Between 2021 and 2023, 1.7 billion rand flowed through covert operation accounts. Not budget allocations. Offshore accounts, shell companies, complex transactions, payments to contractors, tech vendors, and even accounts linked to the president's family. One payment of 83 million rand went to a Cyprus-based firm that appears to exist solely as a conduit for cash. Regular contact between its registered number and presidential security personnel confirms the link. Does anyone else find that deeply unsettling? Private contractors weren't just security detail, they were active intelligence operatives. South African law clearly limits when private forces can engage in intelligence work. Yet MKHwanazi documents 6 operations where contractors conducted surveillance, threat assessments, and even interrogations on citizens suspected of leaking classified information. These are trained operatives from international firms, billed at millions of rand, performing work the state itself is legally required to handle. Whistleblowers started speaking out in 2023. A mid-level analyst described compiling dossiers on judges presiding over corruption cases, instructions coming directly from senior officials. An IT contractor confirmed surveillance systems were configured to intercept data far beyond operational requirements, targeting law firms, advocacy groups, and opposition offices. A Treasury official flagged procurement irregularities and was quietly reassigned. International implications escalate the stakes. In 2022, German authorities detained 2 South Africans conducting unauthorized intelligence targeting Zimbabwean exiles. They held diplomatic passports but no official posting. Similar incidents occurred in the UK and Australia. Unauthorized intelligence on foreign soil jeopardizes diplomatic relations. The scandal's roots stretch back further. MKHwanazi's testimony reveals that infrastructure and financial channels set up under the Zuma administration weren't dismantled. They were repurposed. Offshore companies in Dubai, initially used for Gupta-linked transactions, processed payments for Ramaphosa's contractors. Journalists face intimidation, suppression, and even physical surveillance. One had her office computer remotely accessed and files deleted. Another received direct warnings implying prosecution. A third was followed by vehicles tied to government contractors. Police complaints vanish. Case files disappear. Does anyone else see how this creates a chilling effect across an entire media landscape? Every journalist watching this story knows the potential cost of reporting truth. Legal frameworks designed to protect national security have been weaponized. The Protection of State Information Act is now a shield for unconstitutional activity. Parliamentary committees get blanket classified documents. Civil society access requests are denied. Whistleblowers are threatened with prosecution. MKHwanazi himself risks charges for exposing these abuses, despite legal protections for revealing criminal conduct. Where should accountability come from when legal tools meant to safeguard the nation protect those violating it instead? As the details continue to unfold, the unsettling truth remains. Unchecked power corrodes quietly, invisibly, and often irreversibly. MKHwanazi's disclosures illuminate a system few dared to imagine and fewer dared to confront. The documents, testimonies, and evidence provide a rare glimpse behind the curtain, but the final reckoning, if it comes at all, may take years. What will happen next? Will these revelations lead to prosecutions, resignations, systemic reform, or will they fade, another suppressed scandal in a long history of political secrecy? And for every citizen watching, one question lingers. If this can happen at the highest levels of government, what does it mean for ordinary life? And how far should we look before we recognize the signs of power operating without accountability?